Today we're doing garbanzo, spinach, and mushrooms. It's a great blend. It's got a little bit of a Spanish flair as opposed to the Tex-Mex kind of thing that we often see here in Oklahoma. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've got a fair amount of fat in this one. It also involves more pots, so that this one's a little bit more involved than a lot of the recipes that I try to do for you where I limit the number of ingredients and so on. So we'll go ahead and get started. This has got 1/4 of a cup of olive oil or other good vegetable oil. I like the olive oil in this one because it is actually going to provide a lot of flavor with this one that we're going to want. So peel down somewhere between 7 to 8 to 10 cloves of garlic. This is a stew, so you have a lot of options here. And I'm going to go ahead and put these in. We're going to cook these just until they start to turn golden. So keep an eye on them, stir them around. Because they're not chopped up, they're not going to cook at quite the same pace. You know, very often I'll tell you to put garlic in, chop garlic, and within 30 seconds I'm telling you to either take it out of the pan or put in something else, because those small pieces do cook very quickly. Now, in case you're worried, nobody's going to get a big piece of garlic when they actually eat this. This is going to cook in combination with the other ingredients, and we're going to gradually, it will soften up enough that we can smash it against the side of the pan, and we'll get the flavor going in that way. All right, we're getting some color on this already, so I'm going to take this off. We've got a little bit of color going on. That's all we want at this point. The fat is going to stay hot, so the color is going to keep going. What you want to try to do is push the garlic cloves out of the oil a little bit so that the whole thing can start to cool down a tad, because our next ingredient that's going in is paprika. Now, I'm using a smoky paprika here because I want a lot of flavor, and most of the paprikas that we see in the supermarket, unless you're careful, are primarily for color in the US. You see them sprinkled over potato salad or eggs. And what we want here is to get a lot of flavor developed from this. So you can get these kinds of paprika, but you need to put it into the oil after it's cooled down just a little bit. Otherwise, it's all going to clump up. So make sure you take it off the heat. Already given a lot of smoky flavor coming off here. Now, the reason I like the smoky one is because what we're adding here is actually going to make it taste like there's almost meat in there. Now, I've got a 28-ounce can of whole tomatoes. They're going in with those other things, and we're just going to let those simmer. And as we are going to gradually be able to break the garlic up, we're also going to gradually be able to break up the tomatoes. I've got a bunch of spinach. Now, this is about 8 cups of spinach. You could use another green. If you had kale, you could use that as well. I have rinsed down a couple of times. I don't have a lot of water clinging to the leaves, so I've actually put a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan. What we want to do here is simply wilt it down. So a lot of spinach going into a fairly small, medium saucepan, and this is going to cook down. Again, bring it to a boil, kind of keep an eye on it, put a lid on it so that it keeps the steam around it, because we're just going to steam it until it collapses. And you can see how much our spinach is wilted. Now, the goal here of cooking the spinach ahead and not cooking it in the stew separately is because we want to get some of the water out, because we don't want to water down our stew. So simply transfer this into here. You notice I had a little bit of ice in the bottom of the bowl because I wanted to stop the cooking, and just let it hang out with some ice just to cool it off, stop the cooking so it doesn't continue. Once it's cooked, you're going to drain it by squeezing it dry, and then you're going to chop it coarsely. So I'm going to set that one aside and let it enjoy the big chill, and move back over here. Now, our third saucepan, you would have already have used one time, because I've got some nuts, some pine nuts that I'm going to sprinkle over the top. You could cook those, toast those in the skillet, and then reuse it without washing it to save you at least one wash here. All right, so we're going to heat that up. And to that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil again. And so we're going to take this 8 ounces, cleaned and halved and/or quartered, depending on the size, and put them in the saucepan with a little bit of oil here. And we're going to cook them until they start to turn a little bit golden. Also to them, I'm going to put in a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper and a 1/2 teaspoon of coarse salt. And those will also, the salt will also help draw some of the moisture out of the mushroom and let it cook a little bit better. So just stir those around, and then kind of, you don't have to stir them a lot, we're just sauteing, and eventually they'll get a nice golden color for you. At that point in time, you're going to take them off the stove and set them over with the spinach that's already working. Now, what's happening in the saucepan is that our tomatoes, they're softening up a little bit more as they continue to cook. You can use fresh tomatoes to do this too, but you want to make sure that you catch the juice. Probably using a Roma tomato or another kind of tomato that's designed for cooking is going to be your best option. And then as they cook, you're slowly, after 15 minutes or so, you're going to find that they get softened up to press against the pan and break, and that also the garlic will. Okay, this you can see has really cooked down. I've been able to mash a lot of the tomatoes into smaller pieces, and the garlic is also smaller. I'm going to add the garbanzo beans now. This is one pound can, or about 2 cups of cooked garbanzo beans, also known as chickpeas. Before you add these, make sure that you've got the garlic smashed about as much as you are wanting to smash it, because once you put these in, it's going to be much harder to find. Once they're in there, we're going to let this cook just a little bit more. We want to cook it until the oil starts to separate out and until the tomato sauce mixture starts to look a little bit velvety. Okay, when you decide that it's ready for you, which is basically how you do this one, again, it's going to be thick, a little bit creamy or velvety, then you're ready to add these other few ingredients that we've prepared in. I've got the spinach that is now cold, and I've coarsely chopped it, so we'll sprinkle that in and stir it in a little bit. Now remember, you could use kale. The other thing you could do, if it's not spinach season and you don't want to pay for it at the supermarket, is you could use frozen spinach that you've frozen earlier on. And because this is a stew, if you've got a little bit more than what I've used here, it's going to be fine. Just remember that the goal is to add it to it when it's cooked so it doesn't water down the stew, and also that you want to have thawed it out a bit and squeezed it dry. Those are the only 2 qualifiers on that one. The next step, we've got these mushrooms, and there'll be a little bit of juice that comes off with them. Make sure you add that in there again. Oops, excuse me, because that's got a lot of flavor in it. And so we're going to stir that together, and there you pretty much have it. We've got one final step that I'm going to take care of here as we serve it up. I'm going to serve it up in bowls. You could serve it up on a plate with rice or couscous under it. Remember, this makes about 6 servings. And top this off with some toasted pine nuts that we did earlier. That could be almonds if you happen to have those. And again, this becomes a meal that's a very healthy one. It's high in fiber. It's got a fair amount of fat in it, but it's a healthy kind of fat. So that doesn't give you free license, but it's a good choice on that. Serve it with some bread, or the rice or the couscous, or even some whole grain pasta. I think you're really going to like this one if you're brave enough to give it a try. This is garbanzo, spinach, and mushrooms. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.